Okay, it just started. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is another of our video interviews, which is a series that we're doing in celebration of Filipino American History Month this year. And I'm very, very honored and so delighted to welcome a dear friend of mine, La Sarmiento. La Sarmiento is a Dharma and mindfulness teacher, and they are also the board president of the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, D.C. So if you could please join me in welcoming them, I will turn it over to La and have them tell you a little bit more about themselves.
Thank you so much, Genevieve, and it's good to be with everybody today. Honored to be invited to be part of this Philippine American Heritage Month program that Genevieve is so generously offering. So my name is La. My pronouns are they, them. I live in Towson, Maryland, which is just north of Baltimore, Maryland, with my partner Wendy and our two rescue pups, Annabelle and Bader, who are big Facebook fans. And so, I've been a mindfulness Dharma teacher with the Insight Meditation Community Washington for the past 10 years. I've led the people of color and LGBTQIA plus sanghas or spiritual communities within that community for the last 14 years. And I've been practicing Vipassana meditation for the last 22 years. So, yeah.
So I bet that there might be some folks out there who are wondering, Filipino, American, Dharma, I don't understand what those terms are, Vipassana, meditation. If you could just explain a little bit more for people who might be watching the video, what those terms mean and what spiritual tradition that you're a part of, just because I bet that a lot of people who have familiarity with faith communities in the Filipino community might have only met Filipinos who are Christian or Catholic. So if you could tell us a little bit more about your faith community.
Sure, definitely. So, I was raised Catholic, like many Filipinos, and ever since I was a little kid, I think it was because my mother made me wear a dress to mass every Sunday that I just, as a non-binary person, just totally thought like, wow, this is not my jam. And I would go to mass, diligently. I went to Catholic school for second and third grade to, get communion and do confession, etc. But I never really felt a resonance with the Catholic faith. What I did feel resonance was with a God, having faith in God. But the message that I got, through Catholicism just didn't really resonate with me. I liked the ritual of it, that was really beautiful. But in terms of, I guess the way the message was delivered for me, it just never um, resonated. And so as soon as I was able to leave my parents' home when I went to college, I just stopped going to mass. And I started exploring, other faiths in the mostly Eastern faiths, including like Hinduism and Buddhism. And what drew me to Buddhism was it was really about reality, and it was really about self-reliance on my liberation and freedom about who I am is up to me. It's not dependent on being a good person so I can go to heaven one day, though I do hope I go. So I can be with my mom, and my pups that have left us. Um, and so I just love the realness of it. Buddhism talks about the reality of suffering in this life. It talks about um, the acceptance of death as a part of life, and I've been contemplating death ever since I was a little kid, because for me, the contemplation of our dying informs how I choose to live my life. It just makes it, because we don't know like when we will die or how we will die or how those that we love and care about will die. So it informs like just being present in so much about the practice is about living in the present moment and not living for something after this lifetime. Um, and that has just really helped me be with life as it is and accept life as it is. And so Vipassana meditation or insight meditation is a form of practice about paying attention to the present moment and being with each moment with as much compassion and kindness and gentleness as we can. Our tendency as human beings is to want to push away things that we don't like, which is a very primal, human desire. But unless we accept all of life, we can't really live fully and be fully present in it. And so that's really what attracted me, and to also fully accept who I am. Growing up, my parents came to this country when I was 10 months old. I was born in the Philippines in Manila, and my dad enlisted in the U.S. Navy in the late 50s. The United States gave the Philippines its independence, and it created this program in the U.S. Navy to bring young Filipino men, into the U.S. Navy and come to the United States, and that's how my family came here. And you know, so it was really to, as an immigrant, and at a very young age, at 5, I realized like, wow, I don't feel comfortable being a girl, identified as a girl. I didn't feel like a girl. I knew I was attracted to other little girls and had crushes on my female teachers. um, the whole immigrant thing, there was something about, my parents assimilating us into white culture because, to avoid racism, they didn't want to teach us Tagalog because they didn't want us to be accented and made fun of. They didn't want us inviting friends over to our house when we were going to eat tuyo for breakfast because then, it would smell up the house. And so there were all these like things as a young child that I carried that basically gave me this message that I was not okay, that there was something innately wrong with me. And so, and, in the Catholic faith, it was like this message of like homosexuality is not a good thing. And, so there were all these different messagings that I was getting as a child that didn't make me feel very good about myself, and had very low self-esteem. And I found through the practice of Buddhism of offering myself loving kindness, phrases like, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I accept myself just as I am, that along with being with life as it is, and getting that everything external to me is not in my control. And that was what I thought. If I could just control the externals, then I can be okay. But laws can be passed, people can tell me what bathroom to go to, all that stuff I have no control over. What I have control over is how I relate to whatever is happening. And so the practice has just really given me the empowerment to just be fully who I am and accept myself, as I am, and to then accept others as they are too. So that's kind of how I kind of stumbled upon, the path of awakening in this way, and and recognize there are definitely aspects of Catholicism that I still carry. I can like recite the Apostles' Creed. I mean, it's like so ingrained in
Really
me.
in there, yeah, totally.
And I just want to share, in the last year of my mother's life, she was a devout Catholic. She would pray the rosary all the time. She would read her prayer books. And, I just really got like that was her form of meditation. That was just, what allowed her to feel connected and supported, which is what my meditation is for me and what my spiritual communities are for me.
Mhm.
So we shared things. It was, there's like a saying by Satchidananda that goes, the truth is one, the paths are many. So it's like, we just find our own ways.
Mhm. I was wondering if you could talk about the communities within the Insight Meditation community that you work with in particular. And I'm thinking specifically of the LGBTQIA plus communities, and also the youth work um, that you do, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is so powerful and amazing. And when I have heard you through social media and also in person talk about the work that you do with youth, I just think how what it must be like to be the youth that you work with, to have access to an adult like you that is sending them such positive messages about who they are, because I feel like that's such a vulnerable age. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that very often, if many of us, who are older, or many of us who may now be still that age, preteen, teenager years, our lives could have changed so much if we had had access to adults that we trusted who gave us those, positive reinforcing messages.
Right, right, definitely. There's so much about seeing yourself reflected, and there's, we're talking about Filipino American, History Month. It's like we as Filipinos like have a certain invisibility in this country. I mean, it's starting to, like I used to tease and I love that you opened up a Filipino, restaurant, Genevieve, but it's like where are the Filipino restaurants? Like Chinese, the Japanese, the Korean, everybody else has like restaurants, but our food is not celebrated in the same way. So there's something about being reflected, that and being seen in that way. So these communities that I work with. So when I first started going to Tara Brach's, classes at the Insight Meditation Community in Washington 22 years ago, when I first walked into the meditation hall, other than the Buddha sitting next to her, I was the only other person of color in the room.
Mm.
And because it was a predominantly white, straight, cis, middle to upper middle class sangha, that was those were the communities that I was assimilated into, and so I felt comfortable. And there was a special, like weird feeling of the being the token one, not only being a person of color, but also being, a queer, trans person as well. And about 7 years into my practice, the organization wanted to explore like why are we lacking in diversity? Our community does not reflect the DMV, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia area where it's so diverse racially.
Yeah.
And it was through the first incarnation of our diversity committee that I was asked to be a part of it because there were no other folks. So it was like it would behoove
Um,
that
you,
law be included. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
how
look
about
different.
you?
Exactly. And it was through that process that the people of color and LGBTQIA plus sanghas started. And it was interesting because for me, it was as healing, to hold those spaces as it was to like just have them. Because the identity of being a person of color or being a queer trans person were ones that I didn't fully embrace. I had my own internalized racism, my own internalized, transphobia and homophobia, and being with my people, and discovering like, oh, we have so much in common. When I went to my first People of Color retreat and saw like all these teachers that look like me and had similar experiences, as well as practitioners, same thing, it was so empowering. I was like, I'm not going back to another white retreat again unless you pay me, so and so, holding these spaces for these communities, because, dominant culture spaces will often say, like, everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
You can say that, but people don't necessarily feel that, and there's a level of consciousness that over the last 15 years has grown in our community, and there's more diversity in kind of the mainstream offerings.
Mhm.
And so then working with teens, and I just have to say, like, I'm a very accidental teacher. Like, this was never something I wanted to do. I was just kind of like tapped on the shoulder by my teacher, old school way, saying, like, La, you're ready, to teach. I'm like, I have no desire to teach. I got a needs improvement in show and tell in kindergarten, and I don't like being in front of people. And so, but leading the sanghas, really forced me, to step up. And so when I taught my first residential retreat, I was approached by a woman who led a organization for teen mindfulness. And she said, La, I really love the way you teach. I think you'd be really great with kids. Do you have any experience working with teenagers? And I said, I have absolutely no experience working with teenagers, and I'm quite afraid of them.
Perfect.
Yes. And so in that, for me, a practice is like if there's something I would automatically say no to, I have to do it.
Ah.
And if it's not like running away, it's like gently like walking towards the fear. And so a really quick story is, when I went to observe my first teen retreat, I said, I need to see what this scene is like and everything. And so I went to my first teen retreat, and it was interesting because I just like went into my own inner teenager, and I saw all these teens interacting with each other. I was super shy. I was like not cool at all. And, like hear these kids, interacting. And we had these small breakout groups. And in the following morning, and in that breakout group, we were asked to, share how we felt. And I said, I'm just feeling really isolated. I feel like I'm not cool enough for all of you, and I
Oh,
just feel just really alone, quite honestly. And the 15-year-old girl, like right across from me, said, like you're the coolest person here. and the
oh,
and the 15-year-old boy next to her said, yeah, you shouldn't talk to yourself that way. And I
oh.
was just like, oh my God, they like me. And those teens, Genevieve, I haven't taught teen retreats in a couple of years. I kind of retired from it because I've healed my inner 15-year-old. But, these teens taught me so much about, just acceptance, about unconditional love, about, um, yeah, just being who we are, and to be able to like just tell my story. And, it's interesting like how many trans kids and queer kids have like, come out to me and said, you just really made an impact and really helped me, figure out like what was going on for me. And I feel like my life is done, it's like, okay, if a few of these kids can like feel empowered and really love and accept who they fully are, um, yeah, may that happen and ripple out more. So, so yeah, holding spaces for folks that feel underrepresented or have not had as much access, to these teachings and practices is super important, and I'm really glad to have been a part of that process for a while now.
So I'd be interested to hear how, because ever since we first met each other, which was, I think it might be like 20 years ago now,
Yeah, yeah.
um, I was so thrilled to connect with another Filipino American. And I think I was at the time in my life where I was just at the cusp of getting connected to a whole network of Filipino Americans in the DC metro area, but you were definitely one of the first. And there was something for me so special about that. And I think that that is, I'm sure it's a common experience for many non-dominant culture people where when they're in a space, when they find someone else from their culture, they're like, oh, like a lifeline, like a connection, like a kindred,
It's
so
like, you know what this is.
oh yes, for folks who may not know, can you talk a little bit about it?
Well, I've been upping my like COVID t-shirt game, for the last 7 months, and I found this like website of the or Etsy site of this guy who's Filipino who sells like I have one that says chicharron on it that has like the champion, athletic wear, sort of logo. So yeah, so this is like adobo is like my favorite Filipino dish, and so as soon as I saw it, and so it's kind of like Adidas, but it's adobo, So I just thought, gotta get it.
So I was
Yeah.
wondering, as you have moved through all these different communities, how you carry your Filipino-ness with you, or how your Filipino-ness, if you feel that your Filipino-ness, however you embody it, has informed the way that you approach the work that you do, or informed the way that you connect with a range of different people from different communities. Just wondering how, especially because I'm guessing that there may not be a ton of Filipino Americans in the meditation communities that you're a part of. So if that's an incorrect assumption, please correct me. But I also am just wondering, like, what is it like to be a Filipino American in a different type of spiritual community?
Yeah, thank you, Genevieve. It's a great question, and so whenever I teach a retreat, I always like say that I'm a Filipino, Filipinx American, um, and that I'm, gender queer, and like I just name it, because I think, and like here I am singing in front of a dominant culture audience, right, who may never have met a Filipinx person or have never met a trans, or gender queer person. And so it's like just putting it out there. It's like the whole pronoun thing, It's like I always tell folks that my pronouns are they, them.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, why do you have to say all those things? It's because we need to include that into, our vernacular. Like we really need to like have, if we are going to create welcoming, inclusive spaces, because like a lot of folks will be like out there and like, oh my God, I didn't realize you're Filipino. I'm Filipino too, or like always looking for the Spanish last names and an Asian face, and
Mhm.
and stuff. And so um, I'm all about educating through exposure, and educating, and for me, doing my practice helps me have the capacity and courage to like keep being who I am and naming that, so that folks who are like me can like feel that sense of belonging, feeling that sense of welcome, and those who aren't like me just broadening their sense of like who is exists in the world. And there are like more Filipinx Dharma teachers, coming up, and more Filipinx, especially younger practitioners,
Mhm.
coming up, because the whole Buddhist path is about freedom, and liberation. And for me, this practice has been one of decolonizing my mind, and I think about, my ancestors and our history. It's like, wow, we've just been really brainwashed in so many ways, and for example, like, my parents, my mom has passed away, but, they're very conservative. They were Bush loving, Republican, Fox News watching folks. And I'm like, I say to my sister all the time, if we didn't look so much like them, we're adopted. Like, I don't know, like how our ideologies like have been like so 180 from each other. So I feel, what I bring, I have so much pride in our food, like I really like learned how to make, like I'm gonna actually make palabok tomorrow
Oh,
morning.
you are. Oh, I love that's one of my favorite content.
I'm gonna make it for you, dear. As soon as we can come back together, I'm gonna make it for you.
Okay.
And I really like like, and it's really just wonderful. And I love sharing, that, with my dominant culture friends. And, um, and one day I'd like to go back to the Philippines. I haven't been back since I was 16, and it's like really, um, because I was raised to like just look forward, like don't look back, and I just been reflecting a lot on, though I don't know my, ancestors, at all. I know that, they were there. That's why I'm here, and even symbolically, just may my life honor like, ways that they haven't, they didn't receive, when they were alive. And a really powerful thing that happened to me at a workshop, it was a respectful confrontation workshop where we were doing an exercise with the word no, and we were to think of like some experience in our life when we couldn't say no, but now we're going to say no. And I
Mhm.
had some sort of like benign experience that I was thinking of, but being in that physical process of physically saying no, my ancestors, Philippine ancestors, came to me, and I was basically saying no for them to the Spaniards, that
Mhm.
colonized our country,
Mhm.
stripped us of whatever spirituality we had prior to Catholicism,
Mhm.
stripped us of our way we danced, our music, our clothes,
Yeah.
and so that just was the most powerful connection I had, was like, wow, I can say no. My life can be like, no, you're not going to be, you're not going to colonize my mind and heart anymore. I'm going to think for myself and do what I want, you know. So, um,
So
yeah, so for me,
powerful.
just a lot of like pride in a way that is not, segregating, but it's just like, wow, these are the gifts of my culture. Like,
Mhm.
our people are super beautiful and kind and loving, and
Mhm.
um, yeah, and we love karaoke. I mean, what, we're like fun, So,
I do feel like that is actually something that I so identify with Filipino-ness and our culture is just like such a deep capacity for joy, you know?
mm, mm,
Even under the most difficult and challenging and painful of circumstances, just
yeah,
joy and humor and um, just an ability to not take ourselves overly seriously, like
hmm,
in a light-hearted, joyful way, you know?
yeah, yeah.
It's like can be such a gift in particular situations.
Hmm. joy fuels, like we can, the Buddha often talks about like the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows of this life. It's just what life is.
Mhm.
But oftentimes, we can get also bogged down in the sorrows and we forget the joy. And, one way I have decolonized my mind and heart is like, you're not going to ever take my joy away. You can take my rights away, but you're not going to take my dignity or my joy away from me. Like, that's mine, you know? And so to really just like kind of remember that, that I have agency over that,
Mhm.
not anybody else,
Mhm.
just kind of allows me to be in this situation that we're in right now and not be, swallowed up by it or drown, in it. And it's not to spiritually bypass it, but it's like, yeah, I get like all the shit that's going down and it's so beautiful outside, or like, I have incredible friends and family, there's so many blessings and just
Mhm.
also reflecting on all that like helps me get through, the difficult and challenging times, both personally and in the world.
Mhm. Well, I have one more question for you before we head into the surprise that we have for all of our lucky viewers.
Door number 3.
Oh, you guys are so lucky. Just wait. So as we've been talking, and you've mentioned your family a bunch of times, and I feel like often that a stereotype that many people can have about, you know, communities of color is that um, they can be very there's an assumption somehow that they're very like homophobic and not accepting, and or that that communities of color don't see queerness as part of their community. And I just really like so many times over and over again I've just not had that experience. And in your journey to embracing yourself and your trans genderqueer identity, something that I've always just like really noticed and been so moved by is your very, very close ties with your family. And that those relationships just seem to be so strong and dynamic and rooting for you, like grounding, rooting as in grounding.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if you could talk about that, because I do think that, for many trans people, genderqueer people, that many do experience difficulty with their family members and do
Mhm.
experience estrangement. And so if you could talk about what that journey was like for you in terms of coming out to your family and how to communicate to them the fullness of you, of who you are, and
Mhm.
what that's been like, and also what it's been like for you to have those relationships intact.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Wonderful, beautiful question, Genevieve. So like I said, I realized that I was queer, genderqueer when I was a very young child. And I intuited from the world around me that that was not okay. And and my parents, had certain views, about gay people, etc. But something I noticed was that, and I had this belief that I can never come out to them, because if I did come out to them, they're going to disown me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, they love drag shows. Whenever they would be in San Francisco, they would always go to the, drag shows and things like that. And so then when I was in college, I wanted to kind of feel out, like, is it going to be okay to come out to them? And, my parents were like, I said to them, to my mom, it's like, well, don't you think, these, folks are gay? And she was like, no, they just like dressing up as women. And I'm like, okay, mom. And then, my father, staunch Republican, catered for a lot of Republicans, parties, etc. And I said, Dad, Dick Cheney's daughter, like is a lesbian. And he just said out of the blue, it's like, it doesn't matter. He loves her. She's his daughter. And that gave me like a little bit of an opening.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I took this course called the Landmark Forum. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it's like a human potential course that kind of has you confront ways that you've stunted yourself in your life by not being brave enough to just be who you are. And so I took it as a dare to come out to my parents, and I was 38 years old. That's how long like I felt like I was able to like come out to the rest of the world, but my parents didn't know. So I called my parents and I said, I have something really important to tell you. Can I come over for lunch tomorrow? And they said, sure. And so we're having lunch, and Bonanza is on the TV, and because we always have to watch TV when we're eating because we don't talk to each other. And so I said, I want to tell you something. Can we turn Bonanza off for a second?
Amazing
And
sentence.
yeah, and they were like, "Oh my God, they're gonna tell us we have I have cancer." So turn it off. And I said, I've been really wanting to say this to you for a really long time, and I wasn't sure how you would take it. And I'm crying, and I said, I just want to let you know that I'm gay." And I'm crying, and my mom is like, "Don't cry. We've been waiting 18 years for you to say something." I'm just like, 18 years? You didn't like throw me a bone or anything? And it's like, you're our kid and we love you no matter what, you know. And then my mom says there are three things you need to do now that, you've like come out. And the first thing she said was, you need to take a self-defense class, and then you need to get your finances in order because no man ain't gonna take care of me, right? And then and then my dad, who hasn't said a word yet, said, and you need to change all the appliances in your kitchen. And I'm just like,
Why?
I don't, I'm just like, this is the weirdest coming out advice ever. And so that was actually the first thing we did. We replaced the refrigerator, the
Oh my
stove,
God.
and the dishwasher.
Wait, but did you say why that was connected to what you had just told them?
No, no, I had no idea. I was just like, they love me, they accept me. I'm not going to question any
Right,
of their,
totally,
right,
totally.
way of dealing with this. So, and it was interesting because when I told them was at a time in my life where like I was ready to become a monk. I was like, I've had all these serial monogamous relationships. I'm a failure at them. And it was like the time soon after I met Wendy. And it was like, wow, okay, now here I am ready to settle down and get myself settled. I've been practicing meditation for the last few years. I'm a little bit more stable than I was before. And now I've come out to my parents, and they love Wendy. They totally, accept our relationship. They paid for our, wedding. It was just like so loving and supportive. And I never imagined that, as a little kid, that my parents would feel that way about, me and who I am. So, and yeah, like you said, I recognize there are a lot of folks that aren't that lucky, and blessed in that way. Um, and it's it's a journey, and it's I think for me, knowing that 18 years had passed before, I felt a lot of grief of like I lost 18 years of like a relationship with my parents. And so from then on it was kind of like, how can I be present? And it's not like, it's all hunky dory and great and everything. I mean, we have our struggles, but bottom line, there's like so much love and commitment to each other because for us, we don't have a lot of Philippine relatives here in the United States. It's just kind of our nuclear family. And so we're super tight. We literally live right next door to my sister now. My dad lives an hour away and we see each other, socially distanced as much as we can,
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, they were super important to me,
Yeah,
it's like what I know.
so special, so
Mhm.
moving. And
Yeah.
also that by sharing with them who you really are, you gave them a chance to show up for you.
Mhm. Yeah,
And that,
exactly.
and I think that very often it's like so much fear around the rejection that whatever you're losing by not fully having that relationship feels like less than what the rejection would feel like.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but then you're like also assuming how other people are going to be.
Exactly, exactly. And it taught me a huge lesson, Genevieve, in that I need to be true to myself regardless. However other people respond to that, it's not mine. Like I can't take that on anymore, you know, and I used to carry the burden of other people's ignorance or judgment, you know, about who I am. And that's not mine to carry, you know, it's theirs to work out if they choose to, you know,
Mhm.
in whatever way.
Mhm.
So it's liberating, you know, it's
Mhm.
lightened my load, it's empowered me and it's empowering them to, you know,
Mhm.
move towards understanding rather than towards more ignorance.
Mhm. Mhm. So, since we mentioned earlier how much Filipinos love to sing, it seems like a fitting way to end our time together
Yeah.
with a performance. I was
Okay.
wondering if you could introduce Honu and talk a
Yes.
little bit about how you came to play the ukulele.
Okay. So this is Honu. Honu is it's my souvenir from Wendy and my honeymoon in Hawaii 7 years ago. And I have, you know, as like a lot of Filipino kids, like, you know, I was forced to play the piano and I hated playing the piano. And I was always wanted to play the guitar and I always wanted to play the drums. And so I felt like, as an adult, I am going to empower myself and learn how to play an instrument. And the ukulele is like one of the easiest easiest instruments to learn how to play. So I've been tooling around with it a lot. And so this little song, I love spoofing popular songs. And so this is kind of a Dharma spoof song on my favorite boy band, One Direction. So I'll sing it for you now. You're insecure, don't know what for. You'll find your way once you walk through the Dharma door. Don't need ego to cover up. Being the way that you are is enough. Everyone else on the Zoom can see it. Everyone else but you. Yogi, you light up the world like nobody else. The way that you free your mind under's overwhelmed. And when you smile from your heart and it's hard to do, we all know, that's what makes you beautiful. If only you saw what we can see, you'll understand it's on you to be truly free. Right now's the time to let go so you can believe and thus know. That's what makes you beautiful. That's what makes you beautiful. That's what makes you beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Oh, you're so welcome, dear.
Really, just for sharing yourself with us so much during
Hmm.
this interview. I just
Yeah.
feel like there's so many messages for everyone, particularly at this time, that, given me a lot to think about.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, dear, for
Yes,
this
I appreciate you
opportunity.
so much, Kuyala. Thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome, dear.
Okay, bye.
Bye.